I'm Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people create lives of freedom and impact through success in tech sales and the pursuit of self-development. Man, am I excited about our guest today, Josh Norris. This guy built a great sales career, and he was the founding sales hire or go-to-market hire at Lavender, which is like Gong for cold email and AI Copilot for cold email. And he went on now to advise founders of companies at early startups on their go-to-market motions. This guy's extremely talented, extremely smart. And today we're going to talk about a couple different topics, including the art of transitioning careers, including, breaking into tech sales. We're going to talk about how to be successful as a seller. And in particular, we're going to drive the conversation into cold emailing best practices and lessons learned from Josh's time at Lavender. Now, if we have extra time, we might even talk about how to sell as a founder and what to think about from a sales perspective if you're founding a company. With that said, make sure to really soak up this conversation, take notes, and follow through and apply what you learned from the conversation. And finally, make sure to give the like button a love tap because the YouTube algorithm loves that too. And we'll show this video with more people who could benefit from the message, and share with others who you think could benefit from the conversation. All right, my song and dance is over. Josh, I want to turn it over to you. How's your day going so far? And what's a typical day in the life?
Well, today's going great. I've had a friend visiting from out of town for like 2 weeks now. So last day with a house guest, finally get some space back. But it's been fun hanging out with him for the past couple of weeks and just sort of like seeing the city, seeing SF from new eyes, I guess. But business is going great. Everything's good. Day in the life for me. I wake up a little later than most. I work a little later than most. Probably the best decision I've made for my day-to-day in the past 2 or 3 weeks has been blocking off whole days for no calls. Wow. So as a consultant, I take on a lot of projects, and it's just so much easier if I can, get out of bed, have some breakfast, all of that, and then get straight into a project, work uninterrupted all day long on whatever I need to get done. The deep work is so much more productive that way. So 2 days a week are just back-to-back meetings, and then 3 days a week are blocked off. And most weeks, the 2 meeting days fill up, and a third day gets the spillover. It ends up somewhere in the middle like that. But that's a day in my life. I have meeting days. I have deep work days. My most productive are the meeting-free ones. Yeah.
Did Cal Newport's book Deep Work inspire your approach to managing your schedule, or was this something that you just discovered yourself?
Haven't read it. No, I picked up calendar blocking when I was in AE years ago now. And at first it was like an hour or 2 here and there for prospecting, or an hour at the end of the day, every other day, to like fill in, make sure my Salesforce was up to date and everything was filled out the way it needed to be. That turned into like half-day blocks, where maybe Monday morning and Friday afternoon, I just block off for deep work because no one's going to want to take a meeting then anyway. And my no-show rates were higher at those times, and, it turned into that. And then now, like I said, now as a consultant, I do a lot of calls, but I also do a lot more project work than I did as a sales rep. So it just made sense. I don't remember if I got the idea from somebody or if I just thought, screw it, I'm going to block the whole day a couple times. And then that turned out to be the most productive day of my week. So I just started doing it more. I don't remember how it came together, but you look at my calendar, today and Monday were just full of calls. I think Tuesday this week as well, actually. But yesterday and tomorrow, completely empty.
That's so smart, because I've noticed on the days when I have a lot of calls, I can't really make meaningful progress on the things that require me to focus. I keep getting interrupted. So one thing I'm taking away from you, and this principle can be applied as a seller, but also eventually as an entrepreneur, is maybe find days for calls and find days for the deep creative work, where you can really be uninterrupted. And have you found that maybe just like a couple days is enough in terms of deep work for your projects?
At least 2. I need at least 2.
Got it.
a number of my clients are having me overhaul like whole go-to-market motions where I'm dissecting marketing and sales and CS and RevOps and figuring out a whole bunch of different things to change, and then installing new tech and tearing out old tech, and like it's a lot. So I do need to set time aside for that, and it just wasn't enough to set aside a few hours here and there to get through everything. People talk about context switching a lot when they're talking about calendar blocking and time management, and for me at least, my brain does not like to context switch. It doesn't happen very quickly. I'll get in flow state in a project and I'll just go for hours, and that's like my most productive time. And then when I'm in meetings, I can jump between meetings really easily. But like getting back in that flow state is really hard after I've jumped between a couple other things. So for me, it's what worked. As a sales rep, it wouldn't have really worked, because how can you block off an entire day, multiple days a week? But it's just looking at the nature of the work I'm doing and coming up with a day-to-day schedule that works.
The nature of your work has shifted now that you're a consultant. When you were a SDR or account executive, and I don't even know if you were an SDR, were you an SDR at one point, or did you go right into AE? Okay. Right. So when you were in the sales role though, I didn't expect to go here, but for the people that are in that role, like any productivity hacks that worked for you that helped you be highly effective?
I gamified my prospecting. So I was a full cycle AE, 3 different roles at 3 different companies. I gamified prospecting. I would count like numbers of conversations I had, if it were over the phone, or number of like, not the replies I got back on emails, but the number of emails that I was really happy with that I sent. I sent a lot of one-to-one emails early on when I was a sales rep. And then I learned, oh wait, sequences exist. And I started doing a lot of that, but I was never a big spray and pray person. They were always really focused sequences, really short messages, and to the point. And I would count like the number of emails that I felt good about going out. Most of them were one-to-one. I gamified that, and that kept me accountable to like sending them. My first sales role, I was selling to CIOs, CTOs, very technical buyers, a lot of security and IT folks. They can smell a sequence a mile away. You're like the size companies I was selling into in that area, I just didn't really get much success with automated anything. And then my role after that was selling into DevOps, like developers and software engineers. A little more success with automation, but that's just never really been my thing. And I think that's why like Lavender was such a good fit. It's like I already wrote really good emails. I had been using Lavender. I had sold Lavender before I went to work for Lavender, to my team and to some other people at other companies, like recommending them to use it. So yeah, I think I gamified that, and it worked well for me because I was doing a lot of one-to-one email and just cold calling. And then I don't know. I have always been a real stickler for keeping my like Salesforce up to date and keeping all my data and my notes straight. The first half of my career wasn't in sales, so I was used to tracking data for other reasons. Like internal reporting was already really important to me. So it was not a far stretch to start tracking things for like sales KPIs and things like that. So I didn't really have a learning curve, or I didn't have to gain an appreciation for like data input, stuff like that.
So gamify things, keep the CRM up to date. These are some really important, I think, productivity tips that are just fundamental if you want to be successful. Is there anything else you want to throw in? I feel like ideas might be firing, but I have a million questions for you, by the way. But
I mean, I can't wait to hear all the questions. When it comes to productivity hacks, there isn't a hack. There isn't a hack. It's all important to do. I know, right? I'm not going to come in here with a list of like crazy tactics that no one's thought about. Oh my God, if I do that, I'm going to be so much better at my job.
We already got golden nuggets though, and we're just under 10 minutes in.
The golden nuggets are the fundamentals. Like, put in your notes. If you don't put in your notes, then who how can your team help you if you aren't keeping Salesforce up to date? How are they going to know what you're doing? How are they going to know how they can help you? RevOps and reporting exist to help the team make decisions on what to do and how to do it. So if you're not giving them the data on which to make those decisions, how can you expect to get help from your team? And then how are you going to carry a pipeline? How are you going to consistently hit your goal and make good money if you don't have a clean, like if your habits aren't clean? It's fundamental. There's not a productivity hack or some quick fix to something like that.
So we're going to keep, it's true. It's fundamentals. There's just basic things that they're not sexy, and they're in fact obvious, but what's so great about this is this is a great reminder for us on where we need to focus. And we're going down the path of sales success. So I want to keep driving down this path. We will get to, the art of transitioning careers and some other topics like cold emailing in particular. But, I'm curious, like between cold email and cold calling, since you were a full sales cycle account executive that had to prospect, did you find you got more success from one channel or the other? Or was it a pretty even mix? What was your experience?
I had the most success when I was using 3 channels: email, calling, and social selling later on, LinkedIn together.
Okay.
And it's like picking up tactics from people, like leaving a voicemail that references your email subject line. Little things like that really do add up. My current perspective on cold email is that if it's truly cold, if they've not interacted with your company before, it's more like an ad spot. You're getting a couple seconds of their attention, plant a seed of name recognition, something like that. Show one data point, and then they're going to delete your email anyway. But they'll see that thing before they do. And I think I treated it like that all along without realizing it. It's like, I'm not relying on them replying to the email, but I know they're going to see the email. So I can plan an idea. And then when I call later, or when I hit them up on LinkedIn, or when later on, when I started getting serious about getting warm intros and stuff like that, they'll already remember a little bit. And they might not remember my name, but they'll remember the company or something that I shared with them. Creating an ecosystem of places that people can run into me and my company and learn about us. That's sort of the perspective I've always taken. And I mean, we can get into the career transition stuff too, but half of my career was before I ever thought of getting into sales. And I was buying software and managing a budget before I ever sold anything. So I knew how people bought software. Like, you're going to try to educate yourself and teach yourself about not only the problem, but a couple different solutions before you even bring it up to people on your team, because that expends political capital. And then you're like having to get the buying committee, like all the people, the stakeholders internally, on the same page. I knew how that process went. So I was trying to create emails and LinkedIn messages and stuff like that would help someone early in that process, trying to learn how to educate themselves. My selling philosophy all along has been along the lines of, no one wants to be sold to or feel sold to. They want to feel like they were given all of the information they needed to make the right decision on their own. And then as a seller, I help them to do that. I give them what they need, and then I let them make the best decision. And I will pick people based on like how I build my lists, how I do my targeting, my research. I'll pick people to try to reach out to who I think I'll win that decision, or who I feel like the competitors they're all going to look at, I have a really good angle on to sell against. And I try to like rig the process a little bit ahead of time, but I'm never trying to push on a particular decision. That's how I've always approached it.
So how does your messaging look then when you're basically empathizing with the buyer and their process and empowering them? Can you distill some of the principles that might go into a solid message? And I know it could be an email, it could be a cold call, it could be a LinkedIn message that's also referenced in the email. So I'd love your high-level thoughts.
High-level thoughts, 2 thoughts come to mind immediately. One of them is really just mirroring LinkedIn data, not LinkedIn, Lavender data. Lavender's AI model that discerned all the patterns that present themselves in an email that then correlate with replies or correlate against replies that was genius, and it uncovered a lot of the same things that great cold emailers had already known intuitively or had found in their own experiments. Really short, choppy sentences, no complex ideas, like keep it very simple. All of that is like my first thought. Like no one's going to sit there and read a long email unless you come in with a what?
I just want to stop you there because I know we're going to get into some more gold, but you had no complex ideas. Now, I also, before this podcast that we're recording, I was cold emailing DevOps engineer or DevOps leaders, and you sold to them too, right? And things could get a little complex. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on like,
is it complex for them?
No, it's probably simple.
They know their space really, really, really well. So you can present like complex terms and interactions in their tech stack or problems they're facing, and to a seller it might seem really complex, but to them it's something they encounter every day. The point with no complex ideas is like not just compound sentences, but like even in multiple sentences or in a paragraph, the idea doesn't jump between like one point to the next too many times. Like cause effect, not like 3 causes and then 3 possible effects, make that simpler. If I'm going to write a cold email, I'm not going to reference multiple problems that they're facing unless I see those problems presented in research I did and I know for a fact that person's thinking about it. If I don't know all of that going in, I'm going to make this email about the first problem. Maybe they weren't feeling that one. Then I'll do a second email on this other problem. And each one's going to have like one piece of research or one idea. And the whole email overall ends up quite simple. That's what I mean by no complex problems.
I love that, man, because I've always sold at places like Oracle and Google Cloud with hundreds of tools in their platform, and now at a cloud consulting company that I work with all 3 cloud providers and ISVs, SaaS solutions, and helping companies optimize their costs and deliver projects. And there's so many things we could talk about, like DevOps, data analytics, generative AI. And so that's brilliant. And it's helpful for me as I go back out to prospect after this. You're saying, maybe I could focus on the data or AI use case. Maybe I could focus on how our managed services team frees up time for the engineering work. So one at a time is what you're saying.
And you can like bucket those together. Like these 3 different product offerings from like Oracle's suite of 1,000 different things all contribute to the same problem or the same priority that the executive you're reaching out to is going to be thinking about. Start there. And then you can reverse engineer it later into potential solutions. You can approach it that way, or just like hit one at a time. And this data was verified in our findings. It's like you get 3 seconds that they're going to scan that email before they decide whether or not they're going to read it. And then if they read it, you're not getting more than 10 seconds on average. And that was like a year and a half or 2 years ago. So it's even shorter now. That was trending down while I was there. So I had been writing emails like that. I found Lavender and it helped me do it better. And then I just sort of distilled that into like my approach, and it made me better. Can you hear my cat scratching on the door, by the way?
Yeah, and you know what? I've got a puppy, and she's somewhere around here, and sometimes she'll bark. So I think it's fun. But I was wondering what that was. And hey, the
I'll just slide back a step.
Oh, you're fine. Oh, look, behind the scenes look. Hey.
You're interrupting.
This is cat-tastic.
This is Sabi. Sabi will scream and demand to be let in, so we can just slide right back there.
So could you say your cat's name one more time?
Sabi. S-A-B-I.
Sabi. What does Sabi think about sales? Have you ever leveraged Sabi to send a personal touch to a prospect or something? Has Sabi ever come into the mix?
He's a really bad, maybe he's actually a really good salesperson. He gets everything you ask for. So maybe he's really good at sales. I don't know. But he doesn't like closed doors. He wants the option to come in and out like all cats. So he wanted to make his presence known. I didn't want him to just sit there scratching all through the rest of this.
Yeah, well, I am glad to have Sabi join the conversation, and Sabi, feel welcome to weigh in at any point with your perspective. So, okay, we get back to the cold emailing here, and again, mind blown. I mean, maybe being dramatic, but that just, it's a great reminder. Keep it simple, focus on a specific priority or problem. Keep going. This is gold. Like
I've got one more thing.
Through Lavender, man, you learned so much. Is that like, were you the founding seller, or when you said founding go to market?
I was their first sales hire, their second hire overall. The first hire was an engineer.
Wow.
So I
big deal.
had a lot of the groundwork. Yeah, it was a very competitive role. This will be so. I want to hit one more thing that you asked earlier, and then we can transition really nicely into like how to get a job in sales. Because
and I also want to know, man. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's like, I also want to know, what does it take to succeed as a founding seller? Like, and there's some people out here that in this audience that want to be a founding SDR, but like, it must really be the Wild West. You must need to be a Swiss Army knife. So it's like, I want a dose of reality of what it takes to go in and do what you did. I imagine it's a great fit for the future entrepreneurs like yourself. So, okay, but letting you go back to the other
We've
point.
got like 3 threads of conversation going here, but
I swear I don't have ADD.
I do want to back up on one, just because it's not something that's shared in common LinkedIn content, but it does really help me, and it is sort of a cornerstone to, like, I guess, cold email in general. But read about buyer experience and buyer journey. There are a lot of people talking about that now, finally. Your buyer is going to start off like mildly aware of the problem that they're facing. Something's annoying them at work, or something's taking too long, whatever. And then they're going to like drift through a process of learning and educating themselves. Then they're going to look at the solutions available to themselves and learn about that. And then they're going to go on to evaluate those and ultimately decide on a purchase. That whole process, like I said, I'd been doing that for 6 years before I ever moved into sales. My first job out of college was managing 36 engineers for a publicly traded SaaS company. I got that job because in college I had founded a software startup, and it had done moderately well for a couple of years before I had to shut it down. I like leveraged that into that job. So I was in leadership roles very early in my 20s, like mid 20s.
That's unique.
It is unique. It is unique. There's a unique story behind how I got that job. Anyway, we can go into that later, but keep that buyer experience in mind when you're doing cold email. The first emails in my email sequence might be targeted, 1 or 2 emails over a few days might be targeted towards someone who is aware of my brand, is aware of the problem. Maybe they know some competitors, like they're a little more knowledgeable. If I don't get a reply to that, I'm backing up and assuming that if this is a truly cold email, assuming that they aren't aware of the problem. And maybe those next couple emails don't even have a call to action. Maybe it's just educating them on some data, or showing a pattern, or bringing a third-party study in, something not related to my company.
Yes.
If there's a call to action on those, it might be something like, is this something you've been thinking about? Or, are you seeing anything like this in your work? Like very open-ended, not pushing for them to do a call or anything like that. And then I move through that buyer journey. It goes from educating about a problem to educating about competitors or different solutions. And then after a while, asking for a meeting at the end. That works. And my most converting emails had been like toward the end of that, once they've like learned a little bit more about the solution. And I've had like good responses from people, even years ago when I was doing this to like technical buyers, highly technical buyers. People telling me like, oh, I hadn't looked at a solution like Instabug, the company I was at back then. I hadn't looked at something like this before. We're just using, what was it at the time? Firebase or something, like a free.
Yeah, that's Google.
Yeah. It's like a free thing that Google offers. And it's really
crazy.
Yeah.
Because I have a deal right now migrating a customer away from that. So
a lot of people use that when they're first building something, then they migrate away from it later. And I was one of the things that they would migrate to sometimes for like mobile apps.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I sold against a free product, and Instabug is not cheap. So, you find the right people at the right size company where Firebase just can't meet the need anymore for whatever reasons. Educate them on other options because maybe they haven't even looked, and then you can book a meeting with a more educated buyer at the end. That's how I would approach it then. But yeah, I think that concept, it's becoming more like common to see it in LinkedIn content related to signals and like being mindful of the buyer journey and not using the like, let's have a demo call, that call to action on every single email, being mindful of, where your buyer is at. I think that's coming. It's more popular now, but it's something people should really be thinking about.
So you're bringing the prospect to a state of awareness about the problem, and then you're going in to ask for the meeting after you've warmed them up and educated them a little bit. So you might have already hit on this, but to revisit one more time, like how many emails might be educational and informative with the very simple call to action? Like, is this a interest or is this something you're seeing before you're like going in, like asking for a meeting?
Just a handful. I mean,
Okay.
Long sequences, I don't really recommend doing very long sequences anymore, like month or longer. The way buyers are buying these days are different than it was 2 years ago. So now it might be just one or two. I might send one or two emails at the start that are maybe the first email is assuming they're more knowledgeable. The second one is less, maybe 3 or 4 emails in the entire sequence, but each one kind of points to a different part of that buyer's journey. Because buyers are smart. If you show them a data point or the right study or the right insight that's actually relevant to them, like they'll remember it. That's been my approach. With clients now running these kinds of sequences, we don't run past like 3 weeks or a month, and it's 1, maybe 2 emails each week. Very, very short, to the point, like a sentence or two, maybe like 2 sentences on average. Getting right to the point, and then the call to action matches the point in the buyer's journey that the email is written for.
So you're sending these ads as you described it, and you're making these prospects more aware, and eventually at the right time, they're probably going to bite. You're planting good seeds, and yeah. Oh shoot, what was my question that I had for? Yes, it came back to me. You said the buyer journey, the way customers buy it, has changed, and I think that's what's informed now your shorter cadences. So can you just distill at its core what has changed?
Buyers are inundated with noise a lot more than they were before. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is risk aversion is up. Because so many people lost their jobs. Every company now has all this pressure to be profitable. If you make a bad bet, buy a piece of software, for instance, that doesn't end up working, like that's really bad. People can lose their jobs over one bad bet like that these days. So those two things together put you in an environment where everyone knows their go-to-market isn't working quite the way they need it to. Everyone's like missing numbers and revenue is down. It's been a hard few years. So go-to-market's not working the way everyone wants it to. We all know that new technology has been made in the past year or two. A lot of AI technology is coming out that could help. And a lot of that has been absolutely transformative. We all know it's out there. But there's so much noise coming from the market. More LinkedIn creators than ever making all of this content. More emails than ever hitting your inbox. Did my camera just freeze?
It did, but I can hear you, and I bet it's going to come back.
I don't know if it will.
So we might have to dance with it. Here you are. And you know what? I had this is the nature of technology, by the way. And when you come to Austin, we're going to go do a beautiful in studio production, high production quality podcast. I can't even talk.
That would be better.
I had Matt Dixon of the Challenger Sale on the podcast, and we had multiple times for a minute where he cut out.
Oh no!
And it might have been on me actually. And so this is much better than that, believe it or not. And now can you believe that?
That's the only time.
Yeah. So okay. So where were we?
I'll start that little bit over. Everyone knows that their go-to-market is not working as well as it used to, and it's certainly not as easy as it used to be. Everyone also knows that there's a whole bunch of new AI tech out there that's been made just in the last couple of years. And that AI tech might be able to help you. You can do new things that weren't possible a year or two ago. Like that's pretty common knowledge, but we don't know what new tools are good and which ones are smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of bad AI tech out there right now. So then you've got a whole bunch of buyers that know they need to make change. They know there's cool new stuff out there that they should be aware of, but their inboxes are destroyed by way more emails than they were getting a year or two ago. Their phone is getting blown up with way more cold calls. So people are just not picking up the phone, not reading these emails. They've tuned out all the noise. That puts you in a situation where buyers know they have a problem. They're afraid to act on any solution because they don't want to do the research because there's just so much to sift through. And then they're afraid that if they do pick something and make some change and move forward with whatever, if it doesn't work out, that's on them and it could cost them their job because risk aversion is so much higher right now. And there's so much pressure to not spend money recklessly and be profitable, all of that. So those three things together put you in a really, really hard environment for sellers, especially people who are actually it's both like large companies and small companies. If you're at an incumbent company, you've got pressure to bring new technology to the table, and maybe your company hasn't done that. If you're at a small, young company, maybe you've got the coolest thing ever, but no one trusts you because there are 1,000 other really small companies out there claiming to be the best thing ever. Like, who do I listen to? So, I mean, the niche that I have found in my consulting is that. Like, I'll go do the research and sift through all the tech. And then the solution to your go-to-market problems, it's not a point solution. You're not going to buy one piece of tech and fix the whole thing. It's ripping out old stuff. It's bringing in multiple new things. It's changing your overall strategy. It's changing the tasks and actions and methods that you use day to day, how you interact with your buyers at a fundamental level, and then picking new tech to enable you to do that, to act that way. So like I've taken that approach, which is a much more holistic approach than your average seller does, because most sellers are focused on one thing. So you just end up in a situation where like go-to-market has changed in those ways, and it's really hard for everyone. Your outreach has to like reflect that. You have to write messages and use cold call openers and make content in a different way than you did a couple years ago, and it has to be mindful to the environment that your buyer is in.
So are there any other nuggets that you got from Lavender on cold emailing? Like, for example, subject lines, they should look like this, or any other final nuggets? Because we hit on so much for cold email, but I just wanted to squeeze out as much as I can.
Yeah. I mean, Lavender's data is solid. So if anyone wants to go try Lavender, they can. And what it tells them will be good. It's based on solid data. Number one nugget for subject lines, and I took this habit from, when I'm emailing VPs and different people arguing for budget and stuff before I was ever a seller. The subject line's very simple. It's just a word or two. It's usually lowercase. It might have spelling errors and no one cares. It's an internal email. They know your name that's connected to it. And the message is going to be like either very short and to the point because it's based around getting an answer to a question, or it's very long and thorough because you're writing the email to inform them of something. Like that's an internal email. If I'm writing an email to update a team of 4 people who outrank me in the organization on something I'm researching that we're going to buy, it's going to be thorough. Yes. But if I'm sending the 4 of them a question I need an answer to in order to move forward with something, it's going to be the shortest email you've ever seen because they're going to glance at it for
Interesting.
Yeah. So like if you're a seller trying to get the attention of a buyer, have a short, very simple subject line, just a word or two, and then the email that you first send to try to start the conversation, very short. You're just asking them if something is a priority right now, or if they thought about this, or is this worth looking at? Getting an answer to a question. So make the email as short as you possibly can while communicating why they should care and why they should answer it. But once, and this is reflected in the data too, once they reply, if they ask you more questions and they're not willing to get on a call to discuss them, very thorough answers.
I see.
The question in depth. And they may read it, they may not, but at the very least, if you've got a well-formatted email, they'll return to it and they'll look at it, and you can see that happening too.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, longer follow-ups do get more replies, so like that's reflected in the data. But that's how people buy internally when they're communicating async. Your email is either the purpose is to get an answer to a question, make it very short, or the purpose is to update the group on something thorough.
Thank you for clarifying when the short makes sense and when the long makes sense, in particular when
And
you
why.
get exactly. And the engineers that I'm selling to and working with, I notice they do, when I'm engaged, they want very thorough emails for sure. And they have a lot of questions. They want to know everything.
You
So
know why that is? It's because they're going to go report all that back to their team, and they want to make it look like they thought of everything, and they aren't letting anything fall through the cracks.
and that comes back to empathy for the prospect, that you want to empower them to look good internally.
Yeah.
So
Sellers love to talk about that. Like, oh, we're going to get you promoted. We're going to make the buyer look great.
True.
It's like, okay, but how do you do that? This is one way you do that.
Yes. And I can imagine as you're building, like in a complex sale, like a business justification, like a ROI analysis or a total cost of ownership, you want to really distill that clearly and make it like give that ammunition to bubble up the chain. So did you find, or do you advise people to create like executive briefings for their like champions to bubble up the chain? Is that something you've dabbled in?
Yeah. So I used mutual action plans in the rattiest, simplest Google Doc that I had ever seen for a long time, just to help organize everyone. I still use things like that, although now you have some software that helps make it cleaner, and there are a few options for that out there. I'll write like 1-page executive summaries of a deal. I had been doing that for a very long time too. Nate Nasrallah, a couple of years ago, started popularizing the 1-page business case. His is fantastic. Like go get that one.
Yeah, I had him on the pod, by the way. So.
Love him to death. Really, really smart idea. Every buying committee is going to want to see something like that, or they're going to write one internally in some form. It might not be a 1-page Google Doc. It might be a very long Slack message that someone writes out, or it might be an email thread, but the thoughts are going to exist. They're not going to make a purchase without that. So it's our job as sellers to help our buyers organize that thought process, because that purchase is, unless you're selling to some enterprise company that has a procurement or a vendor team where their whole job is negotiating with vendors and like organizing tech across the team, unless you're talking to someone like that, your purchase evaluation is no one's first priority on their side. No one's. So it's your job to help organize things and make it easier for them and all that.
Yeah, I actually have a call with a customer at 5 Pacific later today to talk about a deal. They wanted a really low price and heavy discounting, and we're not quite going to meet them where they're at, but we're going to see if it makes sense to walk away or not. But I'm going to follow up after that call with a very clear executive briefing on, the business justification and what we're doing, to then pass through to his boss, the CTO. In this case, it's the VP of Eng. So it's just, you're kind of inspiring me. And I'm definitely going to let you know if it works out. All thanks to you.
Nice. I want the update. I want to know. And I'm sure you've talked with Nate, you know what you're doing. I'm sure you've already gotten lots of numbers from that prospect, and you're working through how they're evaluating the purchase and just helping them organize it all. Yeah. That's where it all starts.
Thanks for, again, another great cherry on top right there with that insight. So I want to bring it back to the tip of the spear and just hit on cold calling real quick. Then I want to go to like, what does it take to be a founding, seller at Lavender? And then we will get to career transitions. I'm eyeing the clock. We got about a little under 22 minutes, so I think we can pull it off. So, okay, cool. Cold calling, I just like your high level perspective on this specific channel and how you approach it. I mean, dare I say, it might be interesting to hear even a little bit of a flow or script, or however you think of it, in terms of how you approach a cold call.
So my approach with cold call, I'm not the best cold caller, first off. I'm probably not the person to come to for like specific scripts and stuff. I call when I have a good reason to call. I'm not going to sit there and do a call blitz every day to like 100 numbers. I was not an SDR. I was not trained on cold calling. I would pick up the phone when I found a prospect that I just really thought like, oh, this would be a good fit. And I could see why. I'd pick up the phone, greet them, and just be like, look, this is a cold call. I found this, I saw this, I read this, and made me think to reach out to you. Like, can we have a few minutes to talk? That approach was like popularized recently by 30 Minutes to President's Club, and they have a phenomenal script that's better than mine. So I would go read their book. that they just published, and I'd go get that one. But like presenting the research that you did before you even introduce yourself, before you even go into anything else, has always sort of been my approach, just because I didn't do enough cold calls that I did a low enough number of cold calls that I could do that research for every single one. I was calling after I found an account I wanted to reach out to, and after I had like built up that research and had my reason to reach out. So it just is natural to lead with that. There are products these days that tell you the best time of day to call and pull research up for you as you're calling. Like you don't have to do that work. I love some of those tools. I've looked at Lead Labs. I've looked at like Phone Ready Leads. Multiple dialers can do that for you now. Helps make it a lot easier. But back when I was cold calling, it was like, do your own research, make your own list, you know, put it in a simple dialer and then go. But yeah, leading with a polite introduction or something into like, I read this in your annual report, or your CEO made this comment in a podcast last week, and it made me think to reach out to you because you're like the head of IT, right? That kind of thing. That always worked for me. It were more like warm calls, I guess, than cold calls.
Golden. I really believe in that. And I can't say I'm the greatest cold caller. Now, my buddy Trent Dressel, who I'm seeing tomorrow, it's his birthday tomorrow. He has made like 60,000 plus, maybe 70,000 cold calls now. He's really a beast. He's an expert. He's done a lot. I've actually had the most success with highly personalized cold email, but some of my biggest deals actually have been, whether it was at Oracle or Google Cloud or in my current role, through a cold call, and it started there. And to your point, what I heard is when you make cold calls, it's because you know you're going for the right target. They're going to be profitable, and you know you're very confident you can help them based on who you typically help. And you're showing, you know, thoughtfulness off the bat that earns trust immediately. Like, I noticed this, blah, blah, blah. So awesome example. And I appreciate you even giving a script of like an opener and what that might look like.
Yeah, that's how I like to do it. I never was one to just blast out high quantity of anything, like high quantity, low quality. Let's just spray some out there and see what comes back. That's never been my approach. So personalized, like personalized LinkedIn. I've done cold outbound on LinkedIn. You know, people say don't pitch slap. Like, I don't pitch slap, but like I reach out with a reason, and it's the same kind of opener that you might have in a cold call or in an email. And if you're straight to the point and professional about it, people can appreciate that. If you show you have a good reason to reach out and it's not like an automated crappy message. Yeah, that's the key. Exactly. I think the same with cold calling. I think people will appreciate relevancy no matter where you reach out to them. And some people prefer one channel over another. So I heard constantly, oh yeah, I saw your email. I just don't really respond to emails. All the time I would hear that. It's like, okay, wow. I'm never gonna do cold outreach without hitting, all the bases ever again after hearing something like that from people.
Yeah. One thing I coined, which actually I don't even know who I coined, one of my teammates in my current company coined, is the triple threat, where you might send a nice email like you described, leveraging your principles, and then maybe a LinkedIn request that's personalized reference in the email, and then a call. Like, I'm curious, did you get my email? Like, and then boom. And it's like, you're hitting them from all angles. It's like, hey, I really want to talk to you in a pleasantly, positively persistent way, not a transactional, robotic way. But I love.
And it doesn't have to be those three either. Like, developers are on Twitter a lot more than they are LinkedIn. Hit them up there.
Oh,
figure out where your buyer
call out. Okay. Great call out. And that makes me think of one channel that I never use, but in some businesses, or if you're selling SaaS or tech to a specific segment, it could be good. Instagram DMs. Like, what if you're reaching out to a company that, I actually met a guy who, I forget who he sold to, but his customer profile, they actually, maybe they had like, they're building social media presences or had some like type of support or chat. So I don't know. But I'm just saying. So I've never done it, but it's crazy to think that Instagram could be a channel. Yeah. So
I mean, is it so crazy though?
No.
It's really
I'm being dramatic.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing too. Okay.
These are people. Everyone's on some form of social media these days. Like, figure out where they are and go to them there.
Yes. And so one thing that I did maybe a couple months ago is I called in a technical support. And I was like, I got to come clean. I think I'm in the wrong place, and I was hoping you could help me out. like a lost puppy, a stranger asking for directions. I help companies like yourself with this, and this. I was curious, like, who do you think is the best person to talk to? And this person was so friendly because their customer support. They're like, oh, that's actually, it used to be Corey, but now so-and-so took over. And you know what? Here's their email. And then I put a warm subject line. Like, I forget his name. It wasn't Daryl, but let's say Daryl referred me to you. And then I got the meeting. Like, you can get outside the box, man.
I mean, let's hope people don't start doing that en masse, because one, will stop working. But two, that customer support rep hasn't had a lot of cold outreach before. They didn't know. They're so innocent. Don't spoil their innocence.
Maybe I shouldn't share that. But it's funny how if something like a hack, or I don't even know if hack's the right term, but like a game-changing move is discovered and everyone starts doing it, it becomes less powerful, So I feel like at the end of the day, we always just got to innovate and adapt, don't you think?
Yeah. And I mean, how do you do that? It's figure out who your buyer is, figure out where they are, figure out something creative to say, figure out new places to approach them from. Can you send something to them in person? Are they on a platform that sellers aren't on yet? Is there someone else in the office that is related to what you're trying to help with that you could be approaching instead to get that introduction? Like, you got to get creative, and there's a thought process behind it. It's a skill.
There could be someone tangential. Like for me, I think of heads of partnerships, and they don't specifically deal with, what I'm offering, which is optimize cloud spend and help deliver projects and things and selling expertise. But if I could, find a warm synergy or an angle to get in a conversation and frame, reasonable value of how we can help, they might be bought in enough to say, okay, I'll pass you over. And at least now it becomes warm. Or you get their permission to name drop, like it's spoke with so-and-so. So, man, such good stuff. We got to get to career transitioning, because that'll be a fun way to end the conversation. However, what does it take to be successful as a founding AE at Lavender? That must be the Wild West. So for the people out there that are curious, like, what's the startup life like versus a big enterprise tech like Oracle, where I started? What's your thoughts?
So a large company, you're going to have people who have succeeded at the company before. You can copy what they're doing. You're going to have training programs in place and all this structure and process and all that stuff. You're going to have starting points for everything you're doing.
Yes.
It is so different at an early stage startup. Personally, I thrive in an early stage environment, and I would be choked and smothered to death in a larger company. It's just my personality. This is a personality dimension. It is not a learned skill. This is pretty well researched in psychology science. Like, some people just want to be in the chaos. They don't want the rules and the structure. They want to have to come up with the process. They want to have to write the content themselves and the emails and the scripts and all that stuff. And they want to have to figure out, how do I get in front of these buyers and teach them about my product that they've never heard about before, and like make these deals happen, versus having a brand behind you, having a lot more structure and like a machine that's already moving. It's very different. So if you're going to go in and be a founding AE for anywhere, first, you're going to work a lot. I'm not going to say more, because you can work just as much anywhere, especially in sales, but like, you're going to work a lot. You're going to work in sales development and sales and working with customers to make sure that things are being delivered, because your team probably doesn't have CS built out either. And you're going to be doing marketing to help build up some of that brand recognition, to help with your selling and your outbound. People are going to ask you for, like, oh, send me a document, send me something I can read and show my team, send me this, send me that. Like, I guess I have to go make it. I guess I have to go learn how to make good collateral. I guess I have to, like, come up with ways to answer all of these questions for the first time, because there's no one I can go ask to get those answers. I coined like the email intelligence name to try creating the category. And I, built out a lot of stuff that there wasn't, before Dorothy and I were there. Dorothy started a little bit after me, and we sort of built a lot of that together. I think when we joined, the sales process was anyone could book a call through Calendly, and then they would get one meeting with one of the wills and then like automated follow-ups. And that was it. They just had too many meetings on their calendar. And it was mostly selling into individuals or very, very, very small groups. So we faced problems around, okay, how do we turn this into a proper sales process? Speaking to the team, and how do we make sure that we're only speaking to larger teams, and like sending the individuals into self-serve and just let them do the free trial, and creating content and onboarding things that could help them learn the product and be successful without having to take a meeting. We were building a lot of that stuff. One of our early hires was, we called it user success. It was like PLG success for individual plans, individual people. So there's so many other problems you're going to face because you're building out every single department from the ground up. You know, to use the cliche phrase, these days I'm helping other clients do it. I think Hyperbound is the most visible. I started helping them last November. They were thinking of pivoting into the AI role play idea, and they wanted feedback on the idea. Since then, built the product, launched the product, built a bunch of buzz on LinkedIn, built their brand, got a bunch of paying customers now, and we're focused mainly on building out our marketing, building out our CS to make sure every customer is happy and getting value and successful. And then we're going to be nailing down sales. Sales is going to actually be the last thing that we hire for.
Interesting.
Probably. Yeah. I'm flipping the script on that.
No, what's the typical choreography? Is sales usually the last department, or is it come sooner?
It depends. So Gong did marketing and CS first. I don't remember what order. Sales came later. And I mean, that was like 2019, 2020. So that's a while ago.
And now you do have to have good inbound to have CS come first, right?
Not necessarily. You just have to have customers. So you can still be doing outbound as the founders.
Yeah.
And then once you get paying customers, you get a CS person so that you no longer have to do everything. You can focus on just the outbound and the sales. In Hyperbound's case, it's inbound. We have built a phenomenal brand, and there's a bunch of traction behind it, and people love the product. So we hired CS, Kelsey, to make sure our customers stay happy. And then we're hiring, actually our marketing hire started today. That's exciting.
Congratulations.
Really excited about that. She's phenomenal. But she's going to be focused on keeping the brand going and social media content. And then Sai and Atul are going to be focused on selling and product and engineering. And they've been hiring engineers and a designer and fleshing out what they need in the team. But I mean, Gong did it that way too. I don't think most companies do, though. I think that most companies hire sales early because most people relate sales to like, we're going to make more money. Let's hire salespeople to get more customers. And that's not really I don't recommend doing it that way. I think Lavender, as the first sales hire at Lavender, I think Lavender hired sales too early. And I've told them this. I think they hired engineering too late, sales too early. CS could have been a little earlier. And we needed marketing earlier too. So I'm like adapting to all of that. And I've got mentors who are at Gong in those early days. And I'm learning from them. And I think it just makes more sense to go that way. And so far it's working for a bunch of other teams.
It's exciting to see the impact you're making. And excited to continue to cheer you on and have you on again in the future to, talk about the latest. And I want to bring this conversation home talking about career transitions. And I think, you didn't just transition into tech sales, but you've transitioned into other roles too. And so I just want to distill the principles that have worked for you, because a lot of this audience, based on the data, it's 20 to 30 somethings who are, a lot of them are breaking into tech sales. Some might be coming out of college and it's their first job, but there are teachers, there are bankers, there are sellers in other industries transitioning. And so with that in mind, take it where you may, but let's talk about the art of transitioning careers.
So you can do a hard transition where the new area you're going into is completely different than what you did before, or you can do a softer transition where there's a lot more overlap. Either way, your thought process should be the same. It's all around transferable skills. every single role has transferable skills to every single other role. It's elements of business acumen and professionalism, communication, things like that. So I've used that. How many times have I used that? I had a startup in college, lasted for a couple years after college. That was like 2010 to 2014. I'm 33 years old now, so I've been working professionally since 11 years ago would be when I finished college, and I was working like 3 years before that on my little startup. So 11 to 14 years, somewhere in that range, if you count starting my own company in college. I went from being a founder to managing a team of 36 engineers at this big publicly traded SaaS company called Benefit Focus that I mentioned earlier. They're on the East Coast. I had wanted to move out to San Francisco at the time, but I got that job offer and it was too good to pass up. It's like, I guess I'm doing this. But I got that job by writing a letter and mailing it in the mail to the CEO of the company, cold calling his office and talking to his assistant like 2 or 3 times a week through, it was like November through February. It was through the holidays and beyond then, before I finally got a meeting. And then I went in person to that and met him, and he passed me off to some VP of something, and they passed me off, down the line to someone who was hiring. And so like you just highlight the transferable skills that you've got that are going to make you successful in the role and put them in front of the right person, and then just be super persistent. So I did that transition. Later, I freelanced for a while. I made websites. Later, I got into IT and cybersecurity consulting in San Francisco. That was in 2019. That's the company where I transitioned into sales. My CEO was doing all the sales himself. This was like a 40-person consulting agency at the time, doing like SOC 2 and HIPAA and a bunch of security consulting for startups and SF. And he needed help with sales. And I saw that opportunity. I offered to help, and he kind of let me phase in and take it over the course of about 6 months. Then I stayed in sales for a couple roles, the Instabug and Lavender roles, and then I transitioned into being an independent consultant. Every single time, every job I've ever had, I sent some unique project that I made, like a territory plan or a cold call script or a video demo of their product or TikToks or, all these things, written letters, anything I could think of that I thought they might appreciate, I would send. And if they responded well to anything I sent more. So I was making content, showing them how I think, showing them how I solve problems, showing them that I understand the role, even though some of those times I may not have done that role before. And then just learning how to interview well. Practice your stories ahead of time. That way, when you get asked a question, you're not stumped on how to answer it. You're not thinking about your words in the call. You're thinking about your delivery.
Yeah.
And then, identify transferable skills, focus on your delivery by practicing your stories ahead of time. You can pick out the stories you want to share, before you practice, and pick stories that highlight a lot of really great skills, those transferable skills. And then you go into every interview thinking, okay, where am I going to fit in this story? You're going to find a place to mention it and bring it up and tell the story, because that's like your big selling point. It's going to highlight all those skills, and it's going to segue the conversation into something that you want to communicate, to sell yourself, and you can control the flow of the communication that way, the flow of the interview. That's another thing I do. When I'm job interviewing, I'll introduce myself. I'll usually ask a question at the end of my tell me about yourself piece, so I can control a little bit of the flow and show them how I'm thinking about something, and show them that I came in with some real thoughts, not just waiting for them to ask questions. That's another thing I do. Making a bunch of projects and content.
Yes.
Lavender had told me they were going to give me the job less than a week after they announced it publicly. And it was an intensely competitive role. I had told myself a year prior to that, one day this company is going to hire a salesperson and it's going to be me. I was prepared. Yeah. I had recommendations coming from their advisors and people that they knew, once they opened up the role. I had been preparing. I was ready for it. But
wow, what intentionality.
Oh yeah. A year ahead.
Okay, so we're almost done, but you mentioned telling a story when you interview around, like you just said, certain stories or things that highlight your strengths that you have to get in there. Like you kind of almost take control of the conversation. I feel like I do that too. Can you just give us a little taste of what that looks like? I don't know if it was like, maybe it's hard to remember, but back in your Lavender days of like a framing of what you're describing.
Let me think about that. Let me see if I can come up with an example.
I'm really putting you on the spot. It's a tough one, right? But I don't know if you were alluding to like maybe telling a story that highlights your strengths or,
So
or a great reason. Yeah.
Let's say someone's asking about, well, this, I don't know if the Wills asked me this in particular. I'm making this up, but let's say you're interviewing for an early stage startup and the founder asks you about like times that you helped develop a product or sold a new product. You know, why should we hire you to sell our product? It's really new and it's going on the market for the first time. Like, how do we know you can sell this? I might tell a story of a time prior to then. Well, I worked at this IT and cybersecurity consulting firm. When I started there, it was just IT. There wasn't a security arm, but I came from a company before where I managed this engineering team that dealt with HIPAA compliance for insurance companies. So I saw a lot of need for the IT clients to get SOC 2 compliant, HIPAA compliant, GDPR, things like that. So I recommended the team, well, what if we added on this as a service offering? Like, I'll go find clients, I'll talk to our current clients, and I'll go find new ones, and I'll see if I can sell it. And we already have the expertise. We're managing these systems. We could just deploy them as well and project manage, like rolling out SOC 2 compliance and getting the certification for you, helping you with your audit, stuff like that. That didn't exist when I started at that company. And by the time I took over sales, we had rolled out within like 5 months. Let's see, September to December, I think that's like 4 or 5 months. We had rolled out a full offering around like SOC 2 compliance and HIPAA compliance for these companies. So I saw the need in our current client base. I thought this is probably going to be common going forward. It's something we already have the expertise to execute on. It's just a matter of organizing the offering and then organizing operationally on the inside, like how we do it and who does it on the inside. So I rolled that out. And I think by June of 2020, we had like 3 or 4 clients solely brought on for that purpose. And while I was at that company, by June 2020, I was the only person handling sales. A lot of it was cybersecurity offerings, and we brought in enough business. I brought in enough business that year that my boss told me that I was keeping people employed. We didn't have to lay off a single person in the first year of COVID because I was able to keep bringing in clients. And, you know, at the same time, we were losing a lot of other clients. So we definitely would have lost our team, you know, if we hadn't been doing that. So you tell a story like that. What an impact. Some of the points. Yeah. That's actually one of my proudest moments from
that's amazing. And so there's an insight there too. It's like one of your greatest achievements, proudest moments. And it's just very impactful that you help people keep their jobs. And it's quite impressive. You created something from nothing. So that's the type of showstopper story that even if they didn't ask you about it, you would find a way to weave it in because you know.
Find a way to weave it in. Yeah. That's an example of one I might have used, you know, a few years ago in my career. But figure out what your stories are that highlight your skills, like the transferable skills there, like I listed, seeing an opportunity, seeing a need, finding the right people to sell it to, bringing them in, closing those deals. Like I could do that for a consulting firm. I could do that for a startup. I can do that for myself now in my consulting. That's the transferable skill. And then practice that story, go in armed with it, and make a point to tell it, because that's what the interviewer is going to remember.
Man, what a conversation. We pulled out all
the more things we can talk about too.
I know. And so I'm definitely going to want to have you on again. I know the audience is going to want you to come back on again, because I mean, we hit on so much like that will empower people to be successful in sales and also navigate like in a tech sales for the first time, or navigate from one company to another, or from like say people who want to get out of sales and go into something else. You like hit on some like principles that are so transferable. So thank you for being generous. We went over, but man, was it worth it. Now, I want to encourage people to connect with you on LinkedIn, Josh Norris, and you post great content. I just saw a post recently. I'm like, oh, that really resonates with me. So guys, connect with Josh and follow him there. Any other calls to action for the audience before we sign off?
Not really. I'm not here to sell something. I don't have a website or any other social media, so LinkedIn is the only place you'll be able to find me.
Okay.
I guess if there are founders or leaders who want help with go-to-market and sorting stuff out, you can always hit me up for that. But other than that, follow along, say hi. That's about it.
Yeah. And if there's anyone out there in the audience who's at an early startup as an SDR or a seller where you think, oh, what Josh said resonates, maybe he could help our organization be more successful, shoot him a message, have a conversation, and maybe that could be cool. And y'all could build a relationship and he could make an impact. Okay. The final thing is any final words of encouragement for our audience, mostly again, 20 to 30 somethings in sales. Like it could be just in general, like encouragement and inspiration. And then we'll tie a bow on this.
So I think the thing that keeps me going, and I've had this my whole life, is I just have this annoyingly incessant belief that I can do whatever I want. Like I can start a business, I can do the thing, I can get the job, I can do it. I believe in myself that I can. I'm not immune to imposter syndrome, but I just know that any imposter syndrome you feel, any doubt that you feel in yourself is on the surface. That's not who you are. And it's not necessarily true as you think through what you're doing the right way. Like I believe there's always a path forward in my life to get where I want to go. I just have to find the path, but it's there somewhere. You and I talked before this session about like, I had a car accident in my 20s that messed me up for 2 years. I got really, really sick a year or two ago. It messed me up for another year and a half. Like I've had a lot of things happen to me in my adult life that put a pause on my career, like a hard stop for a year plus each time. And I still managed to get where I am. So I believe there's always a path to where you want to go. You just have to find the path. I would leave that.
I love the dramatic pause and what inspiration, and to the audience, what you see in Josh is also within you. So Josh, okay, this was amazing. Thank you for your time. And to the audience, to your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling and happy living. And we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, y'all.